It's super interesting to me thinking about two podcasters doing a show together because so often we get to sit in the seat of like directing the conversation and just being able to sit back and like ask questions and be curious. What led you to the point where you wanted to start a podcast in the first place?
So it took a while of me diving really deep into personal development stuff and me reading all of the books. Like I read 40 books in a summer when I was 16, and it was insane. But I was just having a conversation with my mom, and I realized that when I tell this story of me starting a podcast, I've often left out a really important detail that I don't know if I've said publicly, but my mom had a podcast when I was growing up. And
Oh, okay.
my first ever guest appearance was when I was like 11 years old. So
Hell
I
yeah.
think that in the story I normally tell, where I talk about how I started a business when I was alone in France, and then I realized that I was unfulfilled, and so I wanted to talk to people about this thesis I had that I needed to be both grateful and ambitious at the same time, and we can get into that. A key part that I leave out is the fact that my mom had a podcast that covered similar things. It was called Core Nourishment and about nourishing your core and your soul. And I've often forgot about that in telling this story, but that's, I think, where a lot of the inspiration, even if it was subconsciously, came from.
Right. That's so interesting. Before I started mine, I walked around for like a handful of years. I think it was 2 or 3 years knowing that I was going to start one, but giving
Yeah.
my excuses of reasons not to. And my mom was actually related to that story too, because she loves doing this thing at Christmas where anytime that she like doesn't know like the right size of clothes or the right like specification on some kind of gift, instead of actually getting the gift and taking a gamble on it and being like, here's the sweatshirt, I hope a large is the one.
Yeah.
Instead, what she'll do is she'll wrap a little piece of paper that says like, "This is good for this sweatshirt. Please order yourself the right size."
Yeah.
And she did that one year with podcast equipment when I was in college, and I knew that I wanted to start a podcast and get into it. So I found like, the little Scarlett setup that had like the tiny little mixing board and two mics, and it was like this all-in-one starter kit. And she gave me that piece of paper that year, and it said like, "This is good for whatever your podcast setup is that you want to do." And I walked around with that piece of paper for like 2 years.
Really?
And I used that as the excuse, I think subconsciously so often that I was like, well, I don't have the setup, so I can't start a podcast. And I think it was this like subconscious excuse that I think that I knew how important it was to me. And that when I got the thing started, there really wasn't any going back because it's almost like this act of admitting this is this thing that I want to pursue. And at that point, there's no more excuses of why you haven't done it yet, or why you haven't gotten guests, or why you haven't started getting good. So I'm curious for you, how long did you walk around thinking about the idea of starting a podcast versus when you actually like got in front of a microphone?
Not long. I think
I
that
love it.
I had a phase in my life where I can really relate to what you just spoke on, which is this almost fear of going all in on something that you really want to, because you fear what if it doesn't work out to the way it has in my mind, right? And so you
Mm,
never really go for it. And I did something that I think other people have as well, but it's less talked about because less people get to the point where I ended up stalling more in the season of my life after I had started, after I'd found initial progress, and then kind of stalling at that point. But we can get into that after I more directly answer your question, which is like, I think that I had this idea that I wanted to start a podcast, and I just hit record. My first few episodes were actually solo. Not a lot of people go very all the way back, but I think my first
yeah.
14 were these solo episodes where I was researching a certain topic. I would like gather evidence and like almost make a essay out of it. It was really
Mm,
cool. Very like psychology based. I would research studies. I learned a ton. And that was actually before I started my YouTube automation company that really kicked off my entrepreneurship journey. But when I was living in France alone as a 16-year-old, I didn't have many people to talk to because at the beginning
mm,
of the year, I couldn't speak beyond like the very simplistic words. And sure, I could always call my friends and family from home, but I had a lot of ideas. And so that's kind
mm.
of that was my medium to get it out. I started just making these YouTube videos I called Jack's Diaries, and I literally turned on the camera and I would just speak for like 5 minutes. And I got a few messages from kids back home who were like, "Jack, your stuff is getting sent around the high school right now," and that was a big moment for me because I was like, "Oh, all right, I care a little bit, but not enough to stop." And that kind of perpetuated, and I started to go all in on it, and I started my YouTube automation company, and I was at this phase in my life where I was just go, 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 take risks, take risks. And I wasn't really thinking about it because I had really pivoted from this time in my life where it was really scared to take action to learning that I learned best and I made the most progress through action. So
Right.
yeah, in terms of my podcast, I didn't really take that long. When I had the idea, I kind of just went for it.
That's such a blessing. Is there a shift that happened going from that like being scared, maybe leaning towards that like analysis paralysis kind of mode to being willing to just say, I'm just gonna jump in and like learn the lessons as I go?
Yeah. The shift really happened when I took the biggest risk of my life and I decided to leave behind sports, school, friends, family, the English language, and study abroad for my junior year of high school, completely shifting my life. Um, because taking such a big risk and watching it work out and
Mm,
seeing everybody question what I was doing, being the first person in my town's history to study abroad in high school, it's had such a profound impact on my life because I got to watch everybody doubt me and I got to watch me do something strictly because I wanted to do it without even knowing why I wanted to do it, just knowing that
right.
I did want to do it and taking the action, proving to myself that I can do it. And I think that that decision made everything else pale in comparison to it. And
Mm,
my advice for people is don't try to take the linear path because you end up taking these small risks that never really change your life in a meaningful way. What I've found is the opposite of what a lot of people recommend, where when I took this massive risk in my life, it completely, almost instantly switched a paradigm where I felt like I can just do things. I can just go all in. I can learn on the fly because nothing's ever gonna, maybe something will. I don't want to speak it
mhm.
into existence, but to this point, nothing's felt harder than showing up in a random French city where I can't speak to anybody. I don't know anybody, and I'm just failing after failing after failing.
Right. It's interesting to think about the fact that if you've got a pain threshold, right, where most of your decisions up to that point might register on like a 7 or an 8 or something like that. But then you take this other one and move your entire life to France and you have like a for sure 10 out of 10. It's interesting to think about the fact that it kind of repositions all of the other risks that you take after that, where if they were an 8 before, it might feel like a 3 because it's like, dude, it's compared to this,
Yeah.
we're good to go. Like this is nothing.
Yeah, 100%. And on top of that, one thing that I did that also like accumulated in making risk a lot harder is I built this relationship with myself throughout the winter of New Hampshire when I was 15, 16, like that kind of year, because I'm a December baby. So 15 going on 16 for like 6 months straight. I don't have the exact days, but and I've missed a few days, but I ran almost every single morning at 5 a.m. throughout the New Hampshire winter.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's this quote by Chris Williamson where he talks about how like the physical activity is so important at the beginning because it allows you to build this relationship with yourself where like when you say go, you go. And
Hmm.
when I did that, it also built this relationship where it was like I can just do it, even though no matter how painful it is. Like I would run outside and I was crying. It was so cold, and there'd be
Yeah.
like feet of snow, and I just did it. I thought I was insane, and I don't know why I did it still, but I just
Right.
decided I was gonna do it, and I did it, and that built a relationship with myself where again it was just like I can just do things.
I absolutely love that. So you mentioned that you kind of had this lonely chapter where you're in France, you don't have very many people to relate to who are actually like in your physical area. You're reading tons of self-help books and all of that kind of stuff. Talk to me about that chapter a little bit and what your focus is at that time, because I think that if you lack direction and you've got that much like of a void as far as what you're going to do with all of that time, I think that it'd be really easy for some people to get depressed, other people to get spun out. Like the world really is your oyster at that point because you've got no like structure necessarily that's pulling you one way or another. So how did you choose to like direct that time, and was there anything that you were kind of shooting for during kind of that lonely chapter?
Yeah, I never spent much time with myself as a kid. I mean, my sister she's 3 years younger than me, and my parents always joke she was so independent, and I would always just, like, beg them to play with me and hang out with me and do things together. So like, even as a teenager, I don't think I felt necessarily comfortable in my relationship with myself. And it showed up in a lot of different places where there are insecurities I didn't know about. And I think it undermined my performance in sports and in relationships. So, this lonely chapter for me, I didn't feel lonely ever
Mm,
because I discovered my best friend, who's me. I just can't wipe the smile off my face thinking about it. How I really was able to get to know me. And meditation was a huge part of my life. It still is. I was reading a ton of like Thich Nhat Hanh, one of my
mhm.
favorite authors in the world. Like just such an incredible man. And I learned to really, really love myself. And so in the lonely chapter, I think that was what I don't want to use the word optimizing even because it wasn't like an optimization. In that word, it sounds like very intentional, very push oriented. It
Right.
was this space that I'd created unintentionally for me to get to cultivate a strong relationship with who I am and write about it and think about it and spend time alone with myself and travel with myself. That was just so beautiful and it served me in every area of my life.
That's so interesting. I went a little bit more of the traditional route around that same kind of time frame. Um, when I graduated, when I graduated college, I went to Montana, left my family, everything like that. Didn't really have anybody that was here. But I found myself during college and during the time I was like sitting in the dorms, playing football, going to class, like doing all of the things that you just do
Right.
as a college athlete. I had that like entrepreneur bug that really started like hitting me hard at like 14.
Okay.
And at this point, so, even though I was real young at the time, for 4 years, I'm sitting here with this like constant voice in the back of my head being like, why haven't you started something? What are you going to do? What's your thing going to be? And like, it really started eating at me. And once I got to that point where I was in college, I started looking around, and some of my friends who didn't go to school, they're either traveling and starting to meet people and they're doing like a content thing, or they started a business that's starting to go well. And like,
Yeah.
I started looking around and getting really kind of like antsy and uneasy, being like,
Mm.
okay, I'm going to spend ideally the next 4 years here. And I know that the outcome of this is I want to be an entrepreneur. And I don't think that podcasting was super strong in the back of my head yet, but I was like, it's not the traditional route by any means. And so
No.
when I
Yeah.
hear your story and see the path that you took, starting a business so young and starting to like get on the self-development journey so young and travel and all of these things, I think that I would have looked at somebody like you when I was 18 and been like, well, damn, this is the opposite of what I'm doing, but it feels like what I should be doing right now.
Uh,
Or if I just had the guts to like jump and build the plane on the way down, this is what it would look like. So I'm curious for you, after having experienced moving to France at that time and starting a business young and starting to do the things you've done, what does it look like from like your side of the fence, having gone that route and looking at some of the other paths that you might have taken if you hadn't done that?
yeah. I mean, ironically, I'm just so infinitely grateful that I have taken this path. And I don't think it has that much to do with me. Um, I think I've just been lucky that my life is lined up in this way. But in terms of the way that I like compare myself to others, because I think that's a big thing, especially around this age of whatever 16 to 22, when you're really your main task, Eric Erickson, one of the most famous psychologists in the world, said your main task is identity development, right? You want to find your identity or else you fall into role confusion. And so I think it initiates a lot of comparison between people. And I
Hmm.
felt it a lot. I feel it. I think we always are going to compare upwards. But there are definitely times when me and my friends that were also doing stuff, we would look at other people and we would honestly talk down on them. We'd say,
Mm,
like, we're doing this. What are they doing? We're so much better. And
right.
just like recently, like within the last year, I think I realized that that was from a really insecure standpoint. Um, and that was me trying to cope with the fact that I wasn't yet where I wanted to be. And get me right, I still want to go so much further. But now I've been able to, everyone has their own path. And I think at some point, we're all gonna hopefully understand that there's divine timing to everything, whether you are religious or not. I'm personally, I don't subscribe to any organized religion, but I have continued developing faith. And I understand that everything's happening at the perfect time. It's unfolding in the perfect way. And everybody's life looks that way because, like, that's what's right for them. There's no need to judge someone for not taking the same path I have because this is my path.
Hmm.
And there's no need to judge myself for not being where these people are at because that's not my path. So I think just some of it just comes with maturity. But
Got you.
there's this empathy that grows over time where I imagine for you, um, as you've grown older and you've become more confident in what it is that you're doing, you feel less, I guess, comparison to other people that are doing different
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that comparison is really the big lever there. And I'm glad that you said that because I think that most of the unease and like the tension that I felt didn't have as much to do with the fact that like the burning passion that I had inside of me knowing that I needed to do something was probably like a 3 because I was
Hmm.
genuinely like I was happy to be in college, I was happy to be playing football, I was happy to do all of that stuff. And it wasn't until I got on Instagram and saw somebody else my age riding in a private jet or speaking at a conference or doing
Oh my
whatever the
God.
thing was that I was like, shit, I'm 4 years
Yeah.
behind because he's doing that thing too. And so, I really caught myself my freshman year. Like I lived with a couple of people and a couple of roommates who were from Boise, from my hometown, and they wanted nothing more than to go back. And I was dating a girl that didn't
Hmm.
live there. And so that was pulling me away. And then I had this
Yeah.
like comparison thing on Instagram where I'm looking at these business owners being like, oh, well, should I be doing that other thing that's also not here? And so I spent a year after making this big decision to be like, everything is pulling me away from being where I'm supposed to be, which is just right here and like enjoying this moment. And
Yeah.
so at the end of that year, my roommates dropped out. They went back to Boise. I broke up with that girl and was like focused on being in Montana. And that next year was the most fun year of college that I ever had because I was able to be present with my friends. I was able to be like secure in the things that I was doing. I had fun playing football again. Like all of those things kind of started to come back. And I realized that it wasn't inherently the fact that I was 18 and wasn't starting a business or wasn't running something. It was the fact that I was seeing other people do it and not looking at the positives and like the things that I loved about my current situation,
Hmm.
but instead focusing on the things that I could have if maybe I was doing something different.
That is, that's so, so profound. And that's exactly why I came up with my idea of the duality of gratitude and ambition, because I realized that there's always going to be a part of me for both of us, for everyone listening to this podcast. I imagine that compares herself upwards and wants to do more. And that's never going to go away. And the only thing that we truly can do is switch the lens through which we see life, because we have all of the ingredients right now to truly be happy and be fulfilled. And you can one of the craziest things to me, it's so simple, but it's insane. You can have two people in the exact same situation that live entirely different lives. Like you, as a college freshman, there might be another person in across the country that has a very, very similar situation to you that
Hmm.
was just loving it And it's because of
Right.
it's because of the lens that you look at it through, right? And that's why I'm so passionate about gratitude, because it can literally shift the lens through which you see life. Instead of thinking, "Oh my god, why have I not done that yet? Why is there a kid a year younger than me that is riding in a private jet that's making millions of dollars?" I'm at the point now for the first time where there are professional athletes younger than me,
Hmm.
like
Yep. That's a weird one.
Cooper
Yep.
Flag is born 6 days after me, and dude is, like, a star in the NBA. It's like, why am I not there? There's always going to be that, and it's only going to increase, I think, as I get older. So, I have to switch the lens. We all can switch the lens through which we live life and think about the fact that we do have this one thing that's always gonna be with us, the present moment, and in it is everything we need to be happy now, and we can still grow. We should always have goals to grow forward. That's important. It's progress that contributes to our fulfillment. But if fulfillment is our goal, then we have to live life through a lens through which we are seeing all that we do have and can appreciate.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things that you talk about is this idea of resonance, and you say that resonance is the intersection of massive ambition and radical gratitude. What does resonance mean to you, and how did you come to that?
So if you look at waves, right, like sound waves or whatever, um, when they're out of alignment, they are kind of canceling each other out. You get a flat line. And so what I think about is if we have ambition and gratitude, something constantly pulling us forward, and something that without any goals forward can actually resemble complacency, we're not going to move anywhere. We're going to feel stuck. So many people use that word. They say, I feel stuck in life right now. But when we work them together and we're both grateful and ambitious at the same time, that allows them to compound. It allows us to love what we have right now while still feel okay asking for more. And that is when the waves are aligned. In math, that's called resonance. And it sounds good. Like there's this ad that I get
Right.
on YouTube all of the time, and it's Sound FM. I think I've seen it so many
Okay.
times. I know the name of it, or Wave FM, Brain FM. I don't know, but they show waves out of alignment, and it sounds like static. And then they show them when they're in harmony, the sound waves at the same time, and the resonance sounds amazing. And
Mm,
that's what I think. I think resonance is alignment, and it's having these two different ideas, like things that seem so opposite, gratitude and ambition, and pushing them together to create more. It's like a 1 plus 1 equals 3. It's an and, not an or.
100%. So, inside of your story, it sounds like there's been a handful of different times where you started businesses, you've gone into like the entrepreneurship realm and things like that. Um, I'm of the belief that business and entrepreneurship is probably one of the most effective self development tools that there is,
Yeah.
because it is an absolute pressure cooker at times.
Oh my God.
Uh, that being said, I think that business is one of the things that really challenges that idea of resonance, right? It was like, how can you be grateful for the things that you've achieved, the things that you've done, and the things that you're doing, while also looking forward and trying to have goals that are meaningful and go out and accomplish them. And I've certainly gone through my phases where those two waves are way out of alignment. So I'm
Yeah.
curious for you, like after doing some of the things that you've done, how has the business world kind of affected your ideas on resonance, and how has it tested it throughout your experience?
Well, Drew, I think it's important to recognize, and I say this on every podcast that I'm on and everyone I host where I talk about this, I haven't figured it out. Like, I still have moments. Just 2 nights ago, I had a pretty stressful night, like, a lot of crazy I was recording podcasts in Toronto and cancellations and, like, crazy logistical debacles. It was insane, and I was like, "Ah." And it's those moments that you grow the most through. And I think that when you haven't had, like have when you haven't felt the hard, it's really scary because it's unknown. But I imagine you can really relate to this. Like when you go through in business these hard moments enough, you start to realize that in some way they always seem to create something better on the other side of it.
Hmm.
When my first business, my YouTube automation company, just out of nowhere kind of fell apart, I was pretty devastated. And if it didn't happen, we wouldn't be talking here today. I would have never gone all in on my podcast, right? And this has
Absolutely.
created the most joy and abundance in every area of my life that I could ever ask for. And it happened because of this hard moment. And those hard moments happen all the time. Honestly, on a different scale, they happen every hour, every day, every week, every month. There's to a different level, a hard moment always creating something better. Bob Proctor, one of my greatest idols in the world, master of the personal development space, he talked about something called the law of vacuum, which is when things start to disappear from your life, people start to ghost you, people don't show up to calls that you booked, right? People don't follow up on emails that you thought were going really well. That is creating space for the better to come into your life. But it only does that if you believe that's what it's doing, right?
True. Yeah.
It only does that if you're like, that
Yeah.
is what's happening. Um, so yeah, I think business has really allowed me to have like this faith that things are working out in the best possible way, but it's only because I've failed and failed and failed and failed and had things go not my way so much, but they always seem to like, it's like a cat. It just always lands on its feet, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that hard times are something that I liken it to when you're driving. I think that hard times look like a storm in the windshield, but look like a sunset in the rear view. And it's so interesting because when you're in the middle of it, it's like, wow, everything is terrible right now. Hail's hitting my windshield. This is going to be super harmful, super expensive. And I absolutely hate this. But as soon as you actually like get through that thing and you're on the other side of it and you look backwards, it's like, oh, but now I'm a better person because I learned these lessons, or I'm better because these new people came into my life, or some people exited my life. And it's not possible without that storm that you went through. And it's one of the
Yeah.
most difficult things for me is having all of that evidence that hard times do create really big breakthroughs and really great moments in the future. It's really hard when you're in one of those really difficult times to remember that,
It
because it's
is.
so easy to tell yourself when like things are going good and all of that. It's like, oh yeah, I've been through all these struggles, I've been through all these things, and like the hard things that I've went through or what make me who I am today. That's really easy to say when things are going good. But as soon as shit starts hitting the fan a little bit, it's really hard to remind yourself that like, oh, all of this struggle and like turmoil that you're facing is also building you up for the next moment that you get to talk about how much your life got better because of this.
Yeah. For you, what's one of those like hard moments that built something amazing? Like I
Mm.
know you were wanting to go into podcasting. Like, was there a hard moment where you ended up being like, all right, I'm going all in?
Ooh, that's a good question. You know, honestly, I think that with this podcast specifically, this is actually the second one that I've done.
Okay.
The first one that I did was co-hosted with one of my good friends, Clay, and we did 42 episodes together.
Nice.
And the thing that was difficult about that was we started to realize that Billings is a phenomenal city with a lot of really great people in it. It's small. We have
Yeah.
150,000 people in it, and at some point, you stop running into people who have an audience that you can record with, and so you have to start traveling, right? Because if you know there are people with great stories, but if they don't have a following or something like that, and I don't have a following as I'm trying to build my show, we're kind of putting this in front of nobody. And so what it became very clear was that we needed to travel and we needed to do some things to like really invest in the podcast. And he was having a baby. He's got a business also, and he was just like, I can't do it, dude.
Yeah.
So that was one of the hard things for me where luckily we both kind of came to the decision together, but I was like, okay, now I'm just going to start this thing from zero. Hopefully there's some like some audience and listeners and stuff that'll carry over, but like, I guess we're going to do it. So that was, I mean, for me, it felt like a very aligned decision. And I think that when there's decisions that you have to make that on paper are difficult, but for your soul feel like it's in like a direct line to the calling that you're supposed to have, I think that the actual tension feels like it's a lot lower in those moments than when you're trying to decide against something that's like not supposed to be in your path.
Yeah. Me and my business partner actually just had a really similar conversation today where um For a lot of honestly, a lot of my audience doesn't even know this, but I co-run a rock climbing clothing brand. I'm a big rock climber. Um, it's called Open Project, and we were doing really well. I mean, we were dominating this Northeast region for a bit,
Hmm.
and then me going to London, it really shook some things up because it put a bulk of the workload on him, and I really started going all in on this podcasting thing, and we weren't seeing there were a few months where like we needed to switch from China to Vietnam production wise, and we weren't really seeing the numbers that we wanted to see. And he started connecting with people that are really high up in the like outdoor industry and realizing that the money really is not there for years and years and years, and you need
Hmm.
big funding and all these things. And so we had a conversation today where we talked about like what are we going to do, and really, like, we have this plan that's now working. Like, I guess we had more of this conversation a bit ago, but today was more just, like,
Hmm.
refining it and going, um, that is working better and has so much more upside and allows us to honestly serve in a better way, where we can now, instead of me covering sales and the social media, I can just do sales, and he can just do design and printing. Now we can screen print for gyms and competitions and companies. It's so much more aligned, and it
Hmm.
makes so much more money, and it's
Right.
like it was a really uncomfortable situation because we both love the brand, and there's still more of that coming, right? But
Right.
in kind of a different way, and it's these uncomfortable situations that lead to so much upside.
100%. Yeah, there's been a handful of moments in my business, and one of the things that's been interesting for me is when I feel like I'm in a situation professionally where I'm giving, it seems like everything goes right.
Yeah,
Right? Where I feel like I'm actually delivering value. I feel like I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to do and I'm like giving to the world. Things feel like they're amazing at that point. As soon as it feels like I'm in business because I want to extract, and a lot of times that extraction is money, that for me is a nightmare
yeah,
because I'm not willing to do the things to provide actual value. I feel like I take shortcuts, or I feel like I'm like playing this game of I can give just the right amount of this, so you give me a little bit more of that. It's like
yeah,
this like gross little trade thing. And I've like, I did a couple different like little clothing company things in college, and I've like messed around with some different offers and businesses and that kind of stuff. But what I really found in my media business, we're 4 years old now, and
nice.
last summer I really started getting to the point where I was like, I just caught myself staring at the ceiling when I was going to bed, being like, "Am I actually doing things for the people who are paying me to work with them?"
Yeah, hmm,
And being a social media agency, one of the trickiest things for that business that I built is a lot of times you can look at metrics like followers and likes and all of that kind of stuff, and you can make some, ballpark decisions on how well things are going based on that. But at the end of the day, if somebody says, "Hey man, I gave you 2 grand this month, how much business did we get?" It's really hard to do that attribution on social media. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just
yeah.
hard to do. And so it was driving me crazy. And I was just like, I have to do something where I feel like we're actually providing value, and I can look at somebody and being like, here's why you work with me. So last year I went from being in a position where I was kind of like, a lot of times not super involved with the day to day. We had really great systems. People could get their content. We could handle all the management, and things were a pretty easy scenario, to diving like head first back into the business and relearning some of the things that I did in my first agency, where we were like learning how to do email automation and launch ad campaigns and like build this whole stack of stuff where we could look at somebody and say, hey, after we ran this campaign, for easy numbers, we charge you guys $10,000 and you made 120 from it.
Right.
So much easier to fall asleep at night and not be staring at the ceiling being like, I wonder if I'm doing anything, when
Yeah.
you're in a situation like that. And so I'm curious for you, after having kind of like dipped into some different things, how have you felt that like change in alignment in some of the different projects that you've worked on?
Bro, we are talking at the perfect time because this is something on so 2 days ago, I had a 10-hour drive from Toronto back to New Hampshire after doing some podcasts.
It's a lot of thinking
And
time.
my phone, I have an old car, so I can either plug it into the aux or plug it into the charger.
Yep.
And that means that for half the drive, I'm listening to nothing. And it was hot too. So I had the windows down because my AC doesn't work.
Yep.
And I'm just thinking. And that thought bugged me. And I thought for 9 hours and 15 minutes until I figured it out. Um, and, I think that a lot of times I can say I'm doing this podcast for other people. Um, and I truly do feel that way in certain situations. But there's an energy I show up with where I'm either serving or I'm doing it for me and I'm doing it for my ego. In that energy, there's a feeling behind it. And so I have a project. I actually wanted to talk to you about it after we record, but to tease your audience a little bit. But I have a really fun project I'm working on right now, and I've just been meeting so many people that are just the most incredible givers. Um, are you familiar with who Cynthia Kersey is?
No.
Okay. Do you know what the Unstoppable Foundation is?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So Cynthia Kersey, she wrote the book Unstoppable, huge bestseller. I first connected with her husband Blaine, one of the top speakers. Like spoke on the Think and Grow Rich movie. He's incredible, and he was connected with like Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, Jim Rohn, uh, Bob Proctor, like all that. And his wife
Mm-hmm.
Cynthia, um, she runs this charity where they actually build schools in Africa, in Kenya. And then after 10 years, these communities are independent because they give water, they mentor people, and they partnered with We Charity to give these kids free college education as well.
Wow.
And so David Meltzer, a huge name in our industry, is the chairman of her foundation. And um, then I've connected with this guy that I'm going to work for this summer named Chris Shembra, who goes into companies and he facilitates these gratitude experiences. And
Mm.
he just gives for free. He does these virtual experiences for free and creates a culture that is so incredible just for the sake of connection. And that can upsell into a keynote or something along those lines. Um, but I've realized that these people that are receiving the most are giving the most. And for
Mm.
me, that needs to be my energy. And so there's been a lot of shifts just really in the past n- weeks, days, where I've been noticing that about my energy and noticing that it's been kind of an on and off thing. And my ego is something that disguises itself in such tricky ways.
Right.
And I can convince myself that I'm doing this for other people. And sometimes that's not really why I'm doing it. And my first business, my YouTube automation, completely for myself, completely egotistical. Um, so yeah, I think that I've had a lot of different phases in this, and it's still something that I'm growing through, and I'm really excited. The energy that I show up with when I'm in this giving mindset is just my favorite. It makes me feel so great.
Yeah, I definitely get that energy from you because in the podcasting space, it's a really interesting thing because I think that the nature of it is set up entirely for giving,
Yeah.
right? It's like we can give each other a phenomenal conversation where like I just learned a handful of things about some people I need to go research. Hopefully I get to you get to walk away from this with some takeaways. A lot of times you get a new great friend out of it. So like on top of all of that, you also give the ability for a listener to hopefully have some takeaways and breakthroughs. They can then go give those to other people. And it's like this constant cycle of if you're just willing to give some of your time and give like the actual attention to a conversation for a couple hours to like do something impactful. So like the ripple effect is massive.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting thing too, though, because like you said about the ego creeping in, it also has the space for somebody to go, ooh, well, if this person has this kind of audience, how big could I get? And maybe I
Hmm.
want to start getting recognized. And maybe like all of those like icky kind of little things can start to creep in. And so I think that, I got a chance to meet Chris Williamson in November last year. And I was thinking about, it was at one of his like VIPs from one of his events that he put on. And I was thinking for a couple weeks, I was like, what's the question that I'm going to ask him? And I was paying a little extra attention on the podcast and I was like, in my mind, I kept on like spinning and spinning on this idea of like, I need to ask something where he's going to be like, ooh, you're a guy like me and you are insightful and thoughtful. And
Yeah.
I was like trying to be impressive or trying to like perform in that way. And I kind of hit one of those rocky periods in my life. And I was like, you know what, man, I'm just going to ask something that like seems very helpful to know right now. And so I asked him, it was right after he went on Rogan's podcast and they were talking about how 150 episodes was kind of the cutoff to say like, you're a professional in the space.
Hmm.
And so I asked him, I was like, hey man, I'm still in my first 150 episodes. I really want to be one of the biggest podcasters in the world one day. How did you keep going during that first 150 episodes when the sponsorship probably wasn't working out? Like nothing's really coming from it, from at least compared to the grand picture that you have for this thing. And he looked at me and he was like, honestly, dude, just whatever you can do to wake up in the morning and being like, hell yeah, I get to talk to Jack at 1:30 today. My day is freaking awesome. It's like, if you can just focus on saying that one thing and like looking forward to what you're going to give to the world from that conversation, the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah.
And so I was like, if one of the most successful people in this space say, forget about everything other than just talking to people who are really interesting and like giving to the world, that has to be the name of the game.
Yeah. It's like, why am I wanting to talk to this person? You can look back in my podcast, and I think I'm far enough away then I don't talk to this person anymore that I can name drop them. But I interviewed Rabbi Manis Friedman, who great guy, but it's just so unaligned. Like the things he talks about doesn't align with what I talk about in any way. I was just so excited because he has millions of followers across
Right.
platforms, and that is what I was looking for. And I think my audience was confused. He said some things that I had to put a thing at the end. It's saying like I disagree with some of these things, but I was too scared as like an 18-year-old.
Right.
I've grown so much in the past year in my ability to like confront people,
Right.
on like and disagree with people, and then I was way too scared to be like no. So I put it as like an outro. Like I completely disagree with what this guy says. I'm gonna watch that after we stop recording.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I was just talking to my dad about it because he's like, Jack, you've grown so much in the past year, and like the people you talk to and the quality of conversations. And even though right now, some of the people I talk to have way less followers, it's not about that. It's about
Mhm.
what am I delivering? Why am I doing this? I want to serve. I want to love this conversation. And that's what gets me excited about it.
1,000%. One of the things that I really liked about what you said, I think it was in your conversation with Dan Millman, who's one of my favorite authors, by the way. The Peaceful Warrior was
Yeah.
like the perfect book for the perfect time when I read it. You said you guys were talking about knowing the what and being patient on the how. And I thought it was something I wanted to talk to you about today because especially in the podcasting space, man, we're in an industry where there's not a linear growth curve a lot of time. A lot of time it's like knocking on the door and nobody answers for an undisclosed amount of time. And then at some point, if you knock long enough, things finally happen. And so I'm really curious for you. You guys were talking about the fact that knowing what your vision looks like is important and then being patient on how are you going to do it and then giving it enough time to actually happen. So I'm very curious for you, like selfishly, how do you reflect on that idea now, is knowing the what but being patient on the how?
Something that he helped teach me, and I've had mentors help teach me, is the how is not our responsibility. It's not in our domain. It's in the universe and all of these events that we can't control. And you should not be too set on this how, because you have here and an endpoint, right? You don't know what it actually, you've never done that before. So if you have a goal that's strong enough that you're emotionally connected enough to, that goal is the important thing. And the how, it's not your job. It's your job to show up and discover it, right? But I love this idea of you take a stone and you just chuck it in a direction and you go in that direction, you know you're going to the stone. You don't know what you're going to find along the way. Maybe you have to jump over a river. Maybe you have to take a boat. Whatever. You just go to that stone and then you get there and you can pick it up and throw it in another direction. But for me, I've known what I want for a while. And there are these different times where I'm so set on it's going to be this way. It's
Mhm.
not going to be this way. I have these opportunities come up when I let go of how I'm going to do it, where I just run into people on the street, man, and they changed my life. I ran into like the Diary of a CEO headquarters and got a when I was in London and got a tour around there because I just talked to a random dude on the street that happened to be one of Steven's like higher ups. And like,
So cool.
I ran into Simon Squibb randomly on the street. I ran into this guy, one of my 650 Instagram followers, on the street of London, and he interviewed me as his second ever guest on his podcast. And it's been a great friendship. And these are all because I've learned that the how is not my job. It sounds a little woo woo or whatever, but it genuinely, like, I don't believe that it's my responsibility to figure out how I'm going to do it. It's my responsibility to show up with the why, with the what in mind, right? And keep going and keep that vision clear
Mm,
and watch what unfolds in front of me and say yes to the opportunities that feel aligned. Say no to the opportunities that don't, and the how emerges. But I would never have guessed like exactly what I'm doing today. And I think that's so great. I think it's so great.
100%.
It's that novelty. It keeps it exciting. Um, and it just allows like this extra kind of power to come into your life and accelerate you toward that what.
Yeah. There's an interesting balance, I think, between being able to let go and have trust versus really paying attention to that like ambition side of the equation for resonance.
Yeah.
And it's something that's been a struggle for me for a long time. And I've been diving more into spirituality in the last year or so because of it. Where I feel like in the business world, it's so easy to think that the best way to do anything is to like white knuckle your way through it and try to control everything and be like, well, if I just work hard enough, I'll eventually get there. And that doesn't lend itself to being super trustworthy a lot of times, because a lot of times it just looks like, well, if I just keep going, if I just try a new direction, if I just do whatever, like, we have to get to this one destination.
Mhm.
And that's a very exhausting way to live for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that you miss like the rigidity that's created in life because of that. I think that it closes you off to a lot of those opportunities where it's like, hey man, if you would have just put that project down and said yes to that lunch that guy asked you to go to, what could that have turned into?
Yeah.
What connections might you have made? What opportunities might have been there? And so that's something that I've really been trying to dive into more and more. And it's something that I wish that, I'm 27 now. So if I could have learned that when I was earlier on in the chapters of my journey, when I was closer to your age, that would have been, I think that I probably would have gotten where I am now faster and probably with a lot less stress,
Hmm.
just because of that sense of trust.
So you think that the like constant and incessant focus on the outcome and getting there as fast as possible caused that stress and kind of ironically caused it to come slower?
I think so, because I think not only having a clear vision of the destination, but also being obsessed over the how.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where, my brain tends to work in systems and it tends to work in logistics, I suppose. And so
Yeah.
the how to me is almost always a very interesting question that I'm trying to solve. And so a lot of
Yeah.
times, instead of just like what you said with the podcasting thing, where you're like, okay, I'm just gonna get a mic, I'm gonna press record. I don't need a guest if I do it with myself. So like now we're live. Now we have a podcast. Instead, I'm like, okay, well, what about the lighting? How do I get the best microphones? How do I like the how ends up getting me to a point where like I've thought 40 different ways around this thing, but I could have just started 2 years ago and probably would have just figured this out if I would have trusted that my first couple episodes don't have to be perfect for this thing to be a success.
Yeah. I think having both types of people on a team is the most important thing you can do. Because,
Hmm.
I mean, the details matter. And I've learned that, right? Um, and there's something to be said. I mean, I know people. So I started like in when I started publishing episodes, I did 3 a week for just like 6 months straight
That's
because
a
I wanted to
beast.
prove to myself I could do it and I wanted to develop the skill of interviewing and just getting shit out there. And
Yeah.
I know people that started around the same time as me that are way ahead of me now in numbers because they obsessed over the small details. I think that I'm going to catch up, right? And I don't feel behind anymore most of the
Hmm.
time. Sometimes I'll catch myself, you know? But
Yeah.
uh they're like we all have the different ways that we learn and I am someone that I've learned I like to learn through action because I like to have data that I can clearly base something off of. I think when, especially in today's day and age, when we obsess over the how, a lot of times it ends up being luck unless you have
Mm,
experience having done it before, which the person I'm talking about did, which is why it worked so much, so well. Um, but if you haven't had experience doing the exact thing before, you haven't learned from a mentor that's done it the exact way, then the best thing you can do is just put yourself out there and learn from the data, learn from the
mhm.
mistakes. Um, and that's always been my point of view. I think I'm learning now to start obsessing a little more over the details. Um, but it's only because I've literally done 130 interviews where I was just focused on having the best conversation.
Right. I think that also setting the metric for success is important in those ways too, because if you can look at yourself and say, over the course of those 130 episodes, my goal wasn't for half of these to go viral, it was to get good at interviewing,
Yeah.
then by that nature, it doesn't matter if they all get 0 views because you did get better at being an interviewer. So I think that that's again kind of comes back to that comparison thing where it's like, my goal wasn't to have 400,000 subscribers at the end of this, it was to be a good interviewer, which is
Yeah.
an important thing to remind yourself of at times because I'm
Right.
in a
Well,
similar boat.
it's like that's what I started off saying my goal was going to be because I know that, but then how do I keep that actually the goal
Yeah,
when I see the podcast getting whatever 15 views? And
right.
that's persistence and that's really having this image, the what in your head and being clear
Yep,
that that's going to happen. And having like it's easier said than done, but having no doubt that it's coming true.
for sure. One of the things that I really enjoy that you've said on some of your podcasts before is that it's better to find one person who has done what you're trying to do and listen to them and just like beeline it to where they went, then try to listen to 1,000 different people and try to like crowdsource your advice from different people. How has mentorship affected the journey that you've been on so far?
Dude, so significantly. Um And it's just really I've just learned this in the past year, and the reason I talk about that so much is because I felt the pain of not doing that. And when, you know, you're a sports kid, right? And I imagine that a lot of your audience probably at least has some relationship to sports, if not in school, right? We have, when we're kids, we have a ton of different sources of people providing a ton of different feedback. And for me, I was a huge baseball kid. And I remember there was one season where I was on like 3 or 4 different teams. I had my town ball team, the all star team, a travel team, and I had coaches all trying to tell me a different thing about my swing. And I was confused. You know what happened? I didn't change it because it felt like I couldn't be right. And
Mm,
today, in today's day and age, most people follow a ton of different creators giving different advice on the same topic. And so, what do you do? How many people actually take action after they watch one of those videos? Such a slim percentage. But if you're invested into one person, they don't have to be the biggest creator in the world, right? They can be just someone that's 3 or 4 steps ahead of you that have got there and know how they did it and have a repeatable formula. And you listen to exactly what they tell you to do,
hmm.
you're not going to fail. And in all of the places where I've made the most progress, it's because I've done that exact thing, whether consciously or unconsciously. In this phase of my life, I'm learning from people all of the time. And for specific things, I have specific people I look to. because I don't want to get mediocre advice. And I don't want
Hmm.
one person that hasn't done something to tell me how to do it. I disagree that you can listen, that everybody has something valuable to say, maybe about a certain thing, but I'm not going to listen to someone that's never started a business on how to start a business. I'm not going to listen to someone that's never gotten views on social media on how to get views on social media, right? And
Yep.
so having and then listening to one specific person and tuning out the noise for a bit so you can make the progress and not second guess yourself and take the action in a aligned way, because no matter what, there are multiple ways to do everything, right?
Yeah.
So do it in the way that the person that you're talking to did it, because it's a formula. You're gonna get the same results.
100%. That brings me to another one of your things that you talked about, and it's like the knowing versus doing gap.
Yeah.
And I thought that that was such a good thing because when I spent that time in college thinking about, man, I wish that I was, an entrepreneur. I wish I was starting a business. I wish I had my thing that I could like apply all of this energy to. Instead, what I applied it to was learning. And so I was super involved in my business class. I actually started a business with my business professor in college. And like I was
So cool.
always, but I was like constantly, I was like learning, 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 learning. But that gap between the things that I knew theoretically versus the things that I was doing kept on getting wider and wider and wider. And instead of giving me a sense of peace that, like, okay, I'm in the starting blocks, I'm ready to go once it's like time to do my thing. Instead, what it did is it like created more and more and more angst inside of me because I'm like, well, now I know all of this shit about what I should be doing and I'm still not doing it. Like I have less and less of an excuse to not be doing something. And so I'm curious for you that knowing versus doing gap, how has finding mentors affected your ability to like go from learning from a million different people to learning from one and actually being able to take action on something?
Yeah. So the knowing versus doing gap is one of the most like prominent causes in today's society of frustration. I think that a lot of people, one of their most common emotions that they feel is frustration because they know how to do the things they want to do. They've heard a million people talk about it and tell them exactly how they did it, give them their exact blueprint. If they have never taken action and they're frustrated because they don't know why they haven't taken action on that thing. And the reason is, or one of the reasons that I hear a lot, is they're paralyzed because they're like
Mm-hmm.
me when I was playing baseball, getting advice from three different coaches on how to fix my swing. They're like, I can't go right here, so I'm just not going to do anything. And they're afraid of going all in. They're afraid of changing because honestly, to create a new life for yourself, a better life for yourself, a better reality, you have to sacrifice the one you have right now, which for a lot of people is comfortable enough that it makes it
Yeah.
hard to change. And so having a mentor and having someone that is giving you like specific advice, one person that's consistent, that is in the position that you want to be in. One, it creates confidence. It creates confidence that you're not going to fail because they are here and they're telling you over and over and over that if you just listen to them, you're going to be there too. And
Yep.
a good mentor wants you to be better than them. And so it creates this confidence that kind of, it doesn't eliminate it, but it eases the fear of failure and rejection a little bit. And then it also creates cohesiveness that allows you to feel, again, confident in taking the action because it eliminates all this doubt that you're getting from hearing 75 different perspectives. Um, and it creates a supporter, someone that's rooting for you, is in your corner because they want you to succeed. And all of that helps people end up actually using the knowledge that they're gaining and taking action on it and creating the results that they know are possible in here in their life. And the difference between what you think should be happening, your expectations, and reality, that's unhappiness. And you're frustrated when you can't figure out how to do it. So having a mentor can really, really streamline the process of eliminating that gap a little bit.
Absolutely. I think that that's something too that being from, I mean, really living in a smaller town since I've been trying to get my business off the ground, get my podcast off the ground, that's been something that I feel like I've lacked in different times that I really was like seeking out. And I think about people who have that same like fire and that same excitement for starting something, regardless of if it's a business or a creative pursuit or whatever. who live in a place where they might not have access to people who have done the exact thing that they're trying to do. And it sounds like growing up in New Hampshire and being in a smaller place, that's probably a similar reality for you. And so I think that that's something that's really important is like, especially if you can't look around and be like, oh yeah, I live in the same town as Chris Griffin and Alfie and all these guys that like, they've all did it and it took them 2 years. So I can
Yeah.
do it too. If you can't be surrounded by people like that, I think it's really important to go and seek out like, okay, if I can't see anybody around me who's done my thing before, I almost have to give myself the proof that it's possible by finding somebody who has, because it's a really lonely game pretty much no matter how you slice it.
Hmm.
And like you said, having somebody who's willing to root for you and show you kind of the way to do it, I think it's such a cheat code, and it would have saved me so much time if I would have done it earlier in my career.
Yeah. The thing is, for a lot of people, though, it's scary to commit to that because they have to show up. Now they're held accountable by someone else. And there's no, a lot of time there's an investment and there's no easy way out. I actually think the best mentorships are ones where you pay because
Agreed.
you're committed. You're committing yourself to this person and this result. And for people, again, that's scary because what you're going to do is you're going to sacrifice the reality that you have right now. And people are attached to it. No matter if
Yep.
they want to change it or not, people are always going to make excuses to keep what's comfortable.
1,000%. I'm curious for you. There's this idea that it's very cliche that you shouldn't meet your heroes or you shouldn't meet the people that you have on pedestals.
Yeah.
It sounds like, and from watching your podcast and from listening to some of the things that you've talked about with mentorship, that you've had a chance to meet people who have been very impactful on you in the past. Do you subscribe to that idea that you shouldn't meet your heroes?
Not at all, man. Like, I mean, and I guess it's from my personal experience, but honestly, what I've said to people before that believe that phrase is like choose better heroes, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
For
my
sure.
heroes, like Dan Millman, is one of these people that has been a huge hero for me, and to one of my um, greatest friends and mentors, a huge hero to him as well. And I met him, and dude, he's an incredible guy, and I still talk to him. And he just randomly will send me a message sometimes and like, "Hi Jack, thinking of you," in his most like two sentence like
Yeah.
wise Dan Millman way. And every person I've met that I look up to in that way, you know what? They've wanted to help me so much and they wanted to support me. And so I think there are multiple aspects to that that are different from, I guess, the average. One is I've chosen heroes that I really truly want to aspire to be, and I've thought about them. I don't just have some random like celebrity hero, right? Like these
Hmm.
are heroes that there's intention behind it, as well as the fact that I'm actively putting an effort to achieve these goals. And when people see that, they want to help out because it all they're doing is accelerating a result that's inevitable. At least that's the way I see it, right?
Yep.
I've said to big podcast guests before, and um, it's yet to really work because we're talking like the top level. But I'm like, you're gonna come on my podcast one day. It's just a matter of when. And I truly believe that. And these people that like my heroes, they've helped me in so many ways because they have these resources and they see me and they understand me because I'm putting in work publicly. And I honestly encourage so many people to do that, especially being from New Hampshire. The way that I've found these mentors is by building publicly, posting on LinkedIn and reaching out and having a profile where people are impressed and they're like, wow,
Hmm.
he's put in effort. Like there's no question. I can't really fake all of this, you know? I've put in
Right.
effort consistently, publicly, persistently. Um, and you get respect from people. So when you truly respect someone and they're a great person and they respect you, they're going to help you out. And that's why I completely disagree with this notion that you should never meet your heroes.
I really like the very simple notion that you should just pick better heroes, because I think what's behind that idea so much is if you meet your heroes, you're going to realize that they're people who are just like you, and some of those people who are just normal people, some people kind of suck, and there's going to be a couple of those heroes that fall into that category, a couple that are super awesome, but I think what's really exciting to think about is if you choose heroes and meet them and they can see themselves in you because you're also putting in the work, you might have also turned that hero into a mentor at some point, which to me is just one of the most exciting things that could possibly happen.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen. I get a lot, and I'm sure you get it too. Like, you remind me of me at your age, or yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
those two might be
Yeah,
correct.
I got you.
And that means so much. Like, I don't know how to thank them when they say that because it's like that's that's so awesome, you know. Um, and you're right, it's a built-in mentor. Then, like I try to be very considerate with the asks that I bring to these people, because I really respect them and their time. Um, but if I do bring an ask to someone like that, they almost always respond and are so willing to give.
Yeah. I think that a lot of that also comes from that essence of where the ask comes from, like we were talking about earlier. Like they can tell that you're a giver. They can tell that the mission that you're on is one that like you truly believe in and that you're excited about. So I think that it makes giving easier. And I'm curious for you. One of the things I'm the most impressed by when it comes to the journey that you've been on, number one is just the sheer volume. Like there is no guessing about whether or not you want this thing, which is very, very cool to me. The other thing is that have you read The Third Door by Alex Banyan?
I have, yeah.
So I think that you've got like the same genetic thing where you can just like make stuff happen when it comes to meeting people and building some of those connections. So I'm curious for you as being somebody who has at a young age and like very quickly in the progression of your career been able to meet some of the most impressive people that are like inside of this space. What are some of the things that you've learned about high performers after interacting with so many of them in such a short time?
So I've learned, I think the biggest thing that I've been able to take away is that the people at the very top of the game, and when I mean this, I mean like in every single way, they have the best relationships, they're making the most money, they're the happiest people. These people all have one specific thing in common. A lot of them have more than that, but the one thing that all of them do is they are so, so passionate about their relationships in their life with everybody. And they're so give first. I mean, the richest people I've ever met respond to my texts faster than anyone in the world. And like my mom responds to texts pretty fast, but it's like instant. And they have such busy lives, but they respect you so much and they care so much about their relationships and making people feel good. Bob Proctor called it the impression of increase. You are making someone else's life better than before. And that is honestly the number one thing that I've noticed among the highest performers in the world. I mean, we're talking like a great example of this is David Meltzer. Like, dude is living, right?
Yep.
His
Yeah.
saying is, I think it's make a lot of money, have a lot of fun, and give a lot, or
Hmm.
something along those lines. And um, yeah, man, he is so generous. And so many of these people are so generous in their relationships. And when you're with them, you have nothing but their fullest attention. Something I really strive to do and to be like, because it's the simplest of things. And what I've noticed is the people right below that level, right? Maybe they're rich, but they're not quite happy. So they're rich in the financial aspect of things, or whatever. They're often pretty pretentious in the way that they think about their time, where it's like,
Mm.
sure, I'll give you 15 minutes. And then it's like more cold. And in order to, it seems like, from my understanding of these people, it seems like to get to the next level, you have to unlock some type of just like magical like giving in essence, and you have somehow like 17 phones that you must be texting on, you know.
Right. That's so incredible, man. Well, I am super excited that we got a chance to do this as early in the game as we did. I cannot wait to see what your trajectory looks like, and I'm super excited that you're doing it publicly because it's really cool to be able to like follow along through the whole thing. I'm curious, before we get out of here, if you had to define your what that you're looking at right now as far as that clear picture at the end of the path? What would that look like? And then what are the next couple hows along the way that you're trying to tackle?
Yeah. So Bob Proctor talked about there's a difference between your vision and your goals. So your vision is like the end. It has all the pieces, right? And your goals are the pieces in the puzzle. So we have my podcast, we have speaking, we have like all these different angles that are the goals. But
Mm-hmm.
the what is truly the vision. And the vision I see is a world in which people truly understand, and it sounds very esoteric, right, when I say this, but it's the truth. It's what drives me, and it's a world in which people understand truly that the lens through which they are looking at life defines their life. And
Mm.
there are easy and simple ways that you can change your entire experience from the inside out without changing anything out here, simply through appreciation and gratitude. And this comes down to everything, man. I mean, you look at politics and people have truly the same values. I know great people on either side of the aisle with the same values and the same what in mind, but they just look at life through a different lens. And if they were able to share collectively this lens of just gratitude and appreciation for the other person, then this world would look so different. And so spreading that message in every way that I can, to every corner, to spreading it to leaders so they can lead like that. Because I'm not the person for everybody. But maybe now that I've shared this with you, you'll share it with your audience and you'll share it with your team. You know what I mean? And we can continue to ripple that out. So that's the what. And I think the how on the next few hows on how we're going to get there. First, we're looking at the podcast as a way of distributing this to the masses, right? Um, and so, what that looks like to keep growing and keep pushing to the next level is going more in person, hiring a team to really analyze content, and all of these things. Um, and the other goal that is really working on right now is bringing together connection for the sake of connection. So, going
Mm.
into companies and having groups of founders that we're really doing these gratitude experiences with, where there's no point in this. No one's selling to each other right now. We're literally just connecting and sharing gratitude with each other and understanding that this connection is the one thing that we're always going to want more of. We're always going to need to just continue to build the world in a better direction. Nothing's ever going to automate it. And being a facilitator of this just brings me so much joy because that's the giving that I truly want to be doing. So those are the two hows that I'm working on right now. They're going to be a ton more that show up. But
Yeah.
those are really the goals at the moment.
I love it. Well, man, I'm super glad that you're doing what you're doing. I have no doubt about the fact that you're going to have a huge ripple effect on the world. And yeah, your message is awesome, man. So can't wait to see where you go with it. And I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Drew. This was fantastic. Great interview. Love getting to connect with you. Amazing questions. And same to you, man. I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Awesome. For the people who want to get more of the gratitude and all of the things that you're talking about, where can they find you, and what are some of the things that they could do?
Look up the Grateful Podcast with Jack Wagoner. You'll find me anywhere you get podcasts. If you want more short bites, I post a lot on LinkedIn right now. And you can find me on Instagram as well, Jack Wagoner.
All righty, beautiful. Cool. We'll link it all in the description. And thanks again for your time, man. This was a really fun time, and definitely check the box of waking up today. Super stoked about doing an interview. So really appreciate it, man.
I love that. Yeah, thanks, man.